Hello and welcome to the Self-Unemployed podcast. In this clip from the first episode, Drew and I are talking about phase 2 of the 4 phases of building wealth and becoming self-unemployed. So phase 2 is about starting money working for you. So once you've got on top of things, you've got a better relationship with money, you've paid off your debt, or it's being paid off and it's under control, then that extra money that you have left over, you need to sort of start investing in a small way. So learning about things like pensions, making sure you're making the most of that. And ISAs are really important, really good way of investing in a tax-free way. And this, you can start with just a small amount, because what's important at this stage is not just to be investing and to get building, investing lots of money. You may not make a lot of money. The important thing is that you start building the habits that will make you a lot of money. That will, so there's things you can do to automate this sort of investing. There's a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I'm sure you've read that, Drew. Have you?
I have indeed.
Of course, yeah. And in that book, he talks about paying yourself first, which means basically invest that little bit of your monthly income or weekly income, whatever it is, that you think you're going to allocate to investing. Do that first. Don't go through the month, spend whatever you want to spend, and then invest anything that's left over, because there won't be anything left over. It needs to be the first thing you do. So getting into the habit of doing that is really important. Did you want to say something?
Talk on phase 2 a little bit more, only because
Yes.
I think phase 2 is probably was my favorite phase in the sense of when I figured out how investing worked and what compound interest really meant. I think that was the start of something that I never expected really my life to go down. And I imagine you were very similar. And I know
Absolutely.
we brushed over ever so slightly ISAs, but I think ISAs would be an interesting place to start, especially the stocks and shares ISA, and the ways we can utilize that, investing into index funds and stuff like that. Because I first learned about it in Tony Robbins' book, Unshakable, which really changed my life. I think I read that I was 19. And I think that book was I didn't have money when I was 19. But that book definitely started to make me realize that this is the path I want to go down. And that was probably the trigger and probably the most exciting time for me. And I still utilize those things that I learned from those books early on. And I'm still reading them all the time. And I'm sure you are as well. And I think phase 2 is probably one of the most, well, they're all very important phases. But I think, the beginning of your investor journey is something that definitely needs a bit more light. What do you think?
I just want to quickly say thank you so much for watching or listening. If you are watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and a subscribe and all that, and subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. All those things are super useful. But if you like what you're hearing and you'd like to become self-unemployed yourself, then I'd really like to build a community. And the way that I'm doing that is I've got a free mailing list that you can join. And when we record these episodes, they're going to be put out as live streams. So you'll get to see a little bit behind the scenes. You'll get to see the episodes before they go out on the main channel and on the podcast. And you'll get to interact with us as we're recording. So if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, head on over to the website, links in the description. And I look forward to chatting with you as we record future episodes. And yes, so phase 2 is super important. And there's a lot of stuff on phase 2 as well. If you were to Google something called the FIRE movement, so FIRE is an acronym for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And this is sort of a whole movement of people who are sort of controlling their costs and to maximize the amount of money they can investing in things like index funds, and then calculating, how much money do I actually need to live, and at what point is my nest egg generating enough that it covers those annual costs, and they call that in the FIRE movement, they call that the crossover point, because on a graph it would be where your the income from your investment crosses over the line of your expenses. So then at that point you are financially independent and you can retire early. So this is kind of similar to that, although the FIRE movement kind of focuses on phase 2. And you can build throughout a lifetime, you can build a really decent amount of wealth without ever going into phase 3 and 4, just focusing on phase 2. If you make the most of pensions and ISAs and keep doing it regularly, keep increasing the amount as you earn more money, increase the amount, you can build, a multi-million pound nest egg. But it takes a long time, and but you know what? That's fine for a lot of people. Phase 3 is not right. It's not, I suppose I go into phase 3 now. Earlier on, I mentioned that phase 3 is when we start taking on a lot more risk, and for a lot of people, that's not the right thing to do. So I think the FIRE movement is great. In fact, I sort of came into this through getting into the FIRE movement, and when I first sort of decided I wanted to start a podcast, it was back then when I was really into the FIRE movement, which is very America centered, and I was thinking I'd love to do something that's more British focused. And that was 4 years ago, so it's taken me 4 years to get here, but finally I'm here. But I've also realized
the FIRE
that
movement, actually, funny enough, I was going to say I came across it myself, and what I found about the FIRE movement was, although it practices and preaches a really good concept of really save your money and pack your money away, it came with a negative side of sacrifice today for tomorrow. And although, in some cases, and in a lot of cases actually, that's a really good idea, there has to be an element of living your life when you can, but not also sacrificing tomorrow. So I think FIRE is fantastic up to a certain degree, where you won't, you won't buy popcorn once every 4 months because it costs so much money. It's like, maybe treat yourself to popcorn every now and then when you go to the cinema. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. There's people that get that in the FIRE movement. One of the things that puts me off. There's people that get really into it and really obsessed with saving every penny, and I just think life's too short for that. And then people talk about different types of FIRE as well. They talk about lean FIRE and fat FIRE and other things like that. So, and depending on how much you're going to sacrifice, basically. And obviously, the more you sacrifice, the sooner you'll hit that crossover point. But I think that, building wealth to a certain point, then moving into phase 3, if you are prepared to take on a bit more risk, is a better way to do it. At least that's what I've done. Thank you for watching. Now, this was just a clip from the full episode of the Self-Unemployed podcast. If you're interested in growing your wealth, becoming financially free, and becoming self-unemployed, then you can sign up for notifications about the podcast at our website. Links in the description. We've got loads of really good guests investing in all sorts of ways, especially in property. So join us, check out the show, and I'll see you soon.